Hey everybody, thank you for joining me today. My name is Haley Gibson, and today I'm going to talk about 7 signs of an underactive thyroid. Hypothyroidism is one of the most commonly misdiagnosed conditions that we are seeing. Many people suffer for years with various symptoms related to poor thyroid function, and they never get the help that they actually need. And there's a lot of things that can cause us to have this malfunctioning thyroid. Hypothyroidism affects women much more frequently than men. Some reports are even saying anywhere from 5 to 8 times more. It's affecting women more so than men. Reports suggest that up to 60% of those with thyroid problems are not even aware of the issue. So 7 of the main symptoms we see associated with hypothyroidism is unexplained weight gain, constant fatigue and tiredness, muscle soreness and pain, menstrual and fertility problems, dry and flaky skin and brittle hair, high cholesterol levels, poor concentration and memory. So today I'm just going to talk a little bit about each of those and why they may be happening. I'm also going to help explain what exactly the thyroid is and why it's important in our overall functioning. I'm also going to discuss why a problem with our thyroid can present in such a way that we may not notice an issue, and also what we can do about it. So before we start, I'd just like for you to know who you're listening to. My name is Haley Gibson. I'm a registered nurse and functional diagnostic nutritionist. I work alongside Dr. David Jockers. I help create customized plans for people based off of their lab work and clinical presentation, and I help them achieve the proper diet and supplementation if necessary to help them achieve their health goals and obtain optimal functioning. So essentially, I like to help people get to the root cause of their issue. If you have experienced a heart attack, or if you've had congestive heart failure, or if you have some kind of gastrointestinal problem or depression, whatever it may be, I like to help you uncover what the root cause of that is and what we can do about it. So we implement lifestyle and dietary factors, that sort of thing. So down below that, you can see our group of the Mountain Challengers that I like to talk about. It is Mountain Challenge season. We meet every Monday and we run up the side of Kennesaw Mountain doing lots of exercises. And it's just a great place to meet great friends here. It's located in Kennesaw, Georgia. To the right of that, you can see myself with my fiance. We just had engagement pictures done. We're getting married in October, and I cannot feel more blessed to have him by my side. So let's get on to the information. So here are the 7 signs that I just talked about that you have an underactive thyroid. So many people notice that they begin gaining weight without making any changes in their nutrition and activity levels. Often I see women who eat a healthy diet and exercise regularly but continue to gain unwanted weight. The thyroid controls our metabolic rate within the cells. When we are unable to get enough thyroid hormone within the cell, our cellular activity slows down and we burn less calories and store more fat. And I'll explain that in just a moment. So when mammals go into hibernation, their thyroid levels drop, which slows down their metabolism so they can survive during a famine. When we are ill, we often don't have an appetite and our thyroid levels drop so we can rest and heal. In the same manner, an underactive thyroid or inability to utilize thyroid hormone effectively is a sign the body needs more rest in order to heal. In our society, when we have unexplained weight gain, we are told we need to exercise more. This is most often counterproductive and actually makes thyroid function worse. So I'm just going to expand on that a little bit. So what is the thyroid? You can see her holding her neck about where the thyroid is. So the thyroid is a little gland that sits in the neck area. And essentially what it does is it secretes a hormone that goes and communicates with all of our cells and tells them how fast or slow to produce energy. It's considered a metabolic rate. So if we have a decrease in this thyroid hormone or thyroid activity, we're going to see a decrease in our metabolism. So when that happens, That makes us tired. We don't have the energy production that we need. It can also cause the unexplained weight gain that I've talked about. We are storing things more readily as fat. We're not burning the energy that we are making. And this, of course, leads to being fatigued and tired as well. Muscle soreness and pain. So whenever we have an underactive thyroid, this can result in all kinds of issues within the cell itself and the byproducts of what is being made. And when this happens, it can leach out into our muscles and cause soreness and pain. We don't have a very good recovery rate. You can have menstrual infertility problems related to a thyroid issue. Dry and flaky skin is another one. So with the slowed metabolic rate, we oftentimes see women who even have cold hands and feet. They just have poor circulation in general, and oftentimes you'll notice that your hair is thinning and falling out. And then the high cholesterol levels, this goes hand in hand with the liver function. So our liver helps convert thyroid hormones into the active form. And whenever we have high cholesterol levels, this actually impairs our body's ability to convert that thyroid hormone. And then also vice versa, if we have an underactive thyroid, we are not converting over our cholesterol levels either. Our liver isn't metabolizing them as fast. And then poor concentration and memory. So with the decreased action in the thyroid, with the thyroid hormones in the cell, this makes it harder for us to think. We get foggy brained, we have poor concentration and memory. And an underactive thyroid, we're finding, is something really easy. It really easily happens now, unfortunately. So the thyroid itself sits in the gland, but there's different areas that can be affected that affect our thyroid hormone. I kind of talked about the liver. The liver is responsible for converting T4 to T3, which means that those are your two forms of thyroid hormone. So the liver can convert the T4 into the active form T3. So if you start back up to the pituitary gland, what happens is the pituitary senses that there's low thyroid hormone circulating, and the pituitary itself should secrete something called thyroid releasing hormone. And this travels down, that's from the hypothalamus. Sorry guys, back up. The hypothalamus senses. The hypothalamus is our major sensory place in the brain, and basically it receives information from the body that there's low thyroid hormone, and it releases something called TRH, the thyroid releasing hormone. This travels down right below it, right underneath the hypothalamus. We have a pituitary gland. This is considered the master hormone gland. So when thyroid releasing hormone reaches this gland secretes something called thyroid stimulating hormone. This is what doctors are typically testing, is this thyroid stimulating hormone. So this is released from the pituitary gland, and it is supposed to act on the thyroid. And there, the thyroid then releases the T4 and T3 that I spoke about. And this is considered a negative feedback loop. So the drop in thyroid hormone should stimulate the hypothalamus and pituitary to stimulate the thyroid. And then a rise in thyroid hormone should inhibit the hypothalamus and pituitary from stimulating the thyroid. Hopefully that makes sense, and I worded it okay. All right. So let's talk about fatigue. If you are noticing fatigue throughout the day, this is a classic sign of low thyroid activity. This is a natural sign the body gives us that we need to slow down and rest. If we are noticing a constant fatigue, it is imperative to listen to our body before we drive it even further into hormonal chaos. Thyroid hormone drives cellular activity and ignites our energy levels. There are delicate pathways between the adrenal glands, the hormone control centers in the brain, which are the pituitary and the hypothalamus, that I just spoke about, and then the thyroid gland. When we get excessive activity of stress hormones produced by the adrenal glands, it can lead to lowered thyroid activity and the resulting fatigue and tiredness. So just to elaborate a little bit on what I'm saying, I believe we've talked about cortisol and the adrenal glands. That's a whole nother lecture. So essentially what I want you to understand is that when our body is under a lot of stress and we are secreting our neurotransmitters and our hormones that activate during a stressful episode, we're actually inhibiting our thyroid from functioning appropriately. Reason being is when you're in a stressful situation, our body is not going to promote restorative functions. It's going to promote survival function. So your thyroid slows down so that it reserves energy sources. And in the meantime, like if you're in a stressful situation, this is okay, but we want our body to go back to normal. We want our thyroid to continue functioning. So what happens is we're under so much stress on a daily basis that we're impairing our body's ability to secrete this thyroid hormone, and it impairs our energy metabolism. So let's just look at this slide a little bit. Elevated adrenaline levels suppress thyroid function. Why? Adrenaline and thyroid both act like gas pedals. Your body doesn't want to run out of gas, so it shuts down the thyroid, which is pretty much what I was saying about when you're in that stress mode response. You're allocating your resources, meaning you're taking your energy and putting it towards survival mode. So your body slows down its metabolism so that you can retain more energy to keep you going through that survival mode. And then the thyroid, a decrease in thyroid function slows liver detoxification. Why? Your thyroid determines the speed of your metabolism, which includes liver detox. As thyroid slows, detox slows. So that comes in with the cholesterol. That also comes in with things that we're exposed to on a daily basis. So if we're exposed to chemicals or pathogens or whatever it may be that the liver actually detoxes from our body, if we have that sluggish thyroid, we're going to slow down our liver's ability to detox those things as well. So it's really a vicious cycle at that point. So as liver detox slows, gut function declines. Why would that happen? Proper detox prevents toxic material from being dumped into the gut. As detox slows, more toxic stuff enters the gut. So that goes back to what I was saying. Whenever we eat things, we're consuming chemicals and pathogens, pesticides. We're consuming these things on a daily basis. And whenever we eat those things, our liver is responsible for cleaning that up. It breaks down our food. It also metabolizes all of the harmful things that we come into contact with, which is what is referred to as detoxing, essentially. So as the liver slows down, the gut function declines. So you can see this is a really slippery slope here. So the gut, as gut function declines, adrenal function increases. Why would that happen? So inflammation from gut toxicity triggers the fight or flight response in the body. The adrenals respond with adrenaline. So what that means is whenever we have a backed up liver, a backed up gut, and then we have excess of this inflammatory process floating around, the triggers for our sympathetic response system, essentially our adrenal glands are kicking on and they're attacking these things. And they're not attacking, the immune system is attacking, but the adrenal glands, they're secreting hormones that keep the body in that fight or flight response. Well, what does that do? That goes back to the thyroid and it suppresses thyroid function. So this is a super vicious cycle. We have to remove ourselves from this cycle and support all of these different areas of function in order to overcome it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about muscle soreness and pain. So many individuals with an underactive thyroid present with muscle soreness and pain throughout their body. They have often been misdiagnosed with fibromyalgia or chronic pain disorder and will often see significant reduction in their pain levels when their thyroid hormone levels are balanced. The medical literature discusses chronic generalized pain associated with hypothyroidism presenting in multiple parts of the body, including the ankles, the legs, wrist, back, neck, arms, and shoulders. These cases are often made worse with exposure to cold weather and are often accompanied by cramping, numbness, and tingling. It is estimated that 80% of all thyroid conditions are autoimmune in nature. When we have an autoimmune reaction to one tissue, our body most likely has developed autoimmunity in additional tissues. This may include the muscle sheath, myelin sheath around our nerves, or joint capsules, all of which would result in pain if enough tissue damage took place. So let's just talk a little bit about antibodies. So antibodies are a normal thing to a certain extent. We don't want absolutely zero antibodies. So if you think about when you're working out, you tear down your muscle so that it can rebuild itself. So kind of the same thing if you think about our thyroid tissue. We have antibodies to our thyroid, and essentially it tears it down, and then we rebuild it. The problem is when antibodies are so active that tearing down the thyroid is happening at a faster rate than the thyroid is rebuilding itself. So these are factors that affect thyroid function. So we need nutrients to help facilitate the release of the hormones and the activation of them and the usage of them. So the nutrients that are really important, and deficiencies in any of these can result in an underactive thyroid. So we need iron, iodine, tyrosine, zinc, selenium, vitamins E, B2, B3, B6, C, and D. Lots of factors there that help the process of using our thyroid hormones appropriately. So eating a healthy diet is key, but then we also have to make sure we're absorbing those nutrients. So factors that increase the conversion of T4 to reverse T3. So let's talk about what that means. T4 is our inactive thyroid hormone released by the thyroid. Reverse T3 is what is created in response to stress. So that cortisol we were talking about, when we're in that fight or flight mode, T4 can be converted to reverse T3 instead of active T3. And this is bad because it mimics T3, but it does not do the same thing as T3. It does not facilitate the metabolic rate and the energy production. It doesn't, make that happen. So reverse T3 mimics T3, does not have the same action. So things that can contribute to you converting T4 to reverse T3 instead of T3, things like stress or trauma, a low-calorie diet. And this one really gets me because whenever we go to the doctor or we're telling somebody, hey, I'm really struggling with weight gain, people encourage you to eat less. When you eat less, this feeds back into the mechanism. Our body thinks it's starving, so it slows down your metabolic rate. It slows down T3 production. It converts T3 into reverse T3 so that you're not increasing your metabolism, you're holding on to your energy production, and you're storing things. So inflammation, cytokines, so any kind of infection or toxicity or inflammation happening in the body, this can pose a stress response and convert that T4 into reverse T3. Liver and kidney dysfunction, we've talked about that a little bit. Certain medications, so medications can overwhelm the liver, they can overwhelm the kidney, and then certain medications can also take away from the binding capacity of this thyroid hormone. So you have to be careful with some medications. Some of them can increase thyroid hormone activity because it takes away the binding sites, which means there's more active thyroid hormone in the circulation, and that can cause overactive thyroid hormone. And then you can also have the opposite, where certain medications will inhibit that conversion of T4 to T3, and it will convert it to reverse T3 or just not convert it at all. So that's another way. So factors that inhibit proper production of thyroid hormones, We talked about stress. Stress is, the root evil of everything, just about. Infection, trauma, radiation, medications. Fluoride is an antagonist to iodine, and now we have a water supply full of fluoride. So I do advise you drink filtered water as well. Toxins such as pesticides, mercury, cadmium, lead. We're finding more and more toxicity related to heavy metals and pesticides. Autoimmune diseases such as celiac. If you have an issue absorbing your nutrients, it can lead to, it can inhibit proper production of thyroid hormones. Factors that increase the conversion of T4 to T3 include selenium and zinc. So we need a good dose of selenium and zinc to help facilitate that. Reverse T3 and T3 compete for binding sites. I kind of talked about that. Factors that improve cellular sensitivity to thyroid hormones include vitamin A, exercise, and zinc. So we don't want to over-exercise. If we over-exercise, we enter into the fight or flight response. So we really want to get a good amount of moderate amounts of exercise. So, 15 to 30 minutes of high-intensity interval training 5 times a week is a good goal. And that would be considered a moderate amount that would not be overly stressful on the body, depending on where you are physically as well. So if you haven't been working out in years, I don't advise going straight to 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. Let's ease into it. But definitely exercising can help increase that metabolic rate, and it increases the cellular sensitivity to thyroid hormone. So let's talk about infertility and menstruation. So women who have issues with menstruation or are struggling with infertility should consider hypothyroidism as a cause. And underactive thyroid is linked to 3 major issues with menstruation. These include the following. So you have early menstruation. This is also called precocious puberty and involves girls having their period begin before the age of 10. So if you menstruated early, this could be related to hormone imbalances. Heavy periods. This is called menorrhagia. I'm probably saying that wrong. But it involves women or young girls having periods that are heavier than usual. Frequent or longer than normal periods. Many women with hypothyroid issues will notice a significant shortening of her cycle or periods that last longer than normal. When the thyroid is not working properly, the body believes it is important to be in a hibernation mode and that the outside environment is not safe to have a child. So here's how that affects fertility. High prolactin levels. Prolactin is a hormone released from the anterior pituitary gland that allows for lactation to develop after childbirth. High prolactin levels reduce fertility in women, which is why women are significantly less fertile when nursing. The anterior pituitary gland is also where thyroid-stimulating hormone is released, and if the hypothalamus senses low thyroid hormone activity, it will ramp up thyroid-releasing hormone, which will then affect the anterior pituitary and often lead to elevated prolactin levels as a result of a massive jolt of activity on the pituitary gland. So I know that that was probably a lot of information. Basically, what that is saying is if we have this ramping up of thyroid activity, if we're having a lot of thyroid stimulating hormone because of the low thyroid hormone activity, remember our thyroid releases the active hormone, the hypothalamus and pituitary release the stimulating hormones. So if we have a low active thyroid hormone level and we continue to stimulate the hypothalamus and pituitary, we're also stimulating prolactin levels. And when our body senses those elevated prolactin levels, we're less likely to be able to house a baby. Our body doesn't think we're ready for it, is essentially what's happening. So very high prolactin levels will often result in what is called anovulatory cycles. So this is where no ovulation occurs. which of course makes pregnancy impossible. Many women with hypothyroidism do not ovulate. So then there's luteal phase irregularity. So high prolactin can cause a reduced amount of progesterone to be produced after ovulation. This would result in a weak uterine lining that is less viable for embryo implantation. This can result in a period that comes shortly after ovulation. Thus, more frequent but shorter periods can occur. So basically what that means is high prolactin can reduce progesterone, and this can cause a weak uterine lining, and that means that the fertilized egg will have a hard time actually implanting into that wall, which is a necessary part for a pregnancy to take place. If it doesn't implant into the wall, it is lost through the vaginal canal. So then other hormone issues, some of the other issues involved with hypothyroidism can include estrogen dominance and low sex hormone binding globulin, which will both interfere with normal reproductive capabilities. So essentially, estrogen dominance, we're not going to discuss that too much, but just know that it's very common because of all the chemicals we're exposed to now due to xenoestrogens, which is another topic. I've talked about it in other videos. You can Google Dr. Docker's estrogen dominance, and I'm pretty sure something will pop up. So with hypothyroidism, and say you do have an estrogen imbalance going on, this can affect the receptor's activity, so it makes our cells less likely to respond to thyroid hormone that is circulating. So then we can also have dry and flaky skin and brittle hair. Let's talk a little bit about this circle we see here on this slide. So thyroid hormone is important to the production of sebum and sebaceous glands of the skin. So sebum, what is that? It's the oil that provides for healthy skin and hair. So if we're not producing enough of this sebum, we'll often develop dry and flaky skin and dandruff. The skin can also become extremely cold, dry, and pale with hypothyroidism. The dryness can be so bad that there may not be any sweating, and the palms and soles can get thick and dry, causing a condition known as keratoderma, which you don't have to memorize that. Hair loss can be diffuse and widespread, involving the entire scalp rather than discrete areas. In many cases, this is due to an autoimmune attack against the hair follicles. Since 80% of thyroid problems are autoimmune in nature, this is a common mechanism. Thyroid hormone is also important for the growth and development of the hair follicles, and without adequate thyroid hormone, the hair can become very dry and brittle. So that's one reason, or a couple of reasons, why you would see dry and flaky skin and issues with hair loss. So this slide kind of touches back on that vicious cycle. We have low thyroid hormones. This causes inflammation, but inflammation also causes low thyroid hormones. It goes vice versa. And then immune dysregulation. All of these things cause each other. So what I want you to get out of this is that if you have hypothyroidism, or if you have leaky gut or autoimmunity, something of that nature, it's never just this one particular thing caused it, and it's not as simple as just addressing this one thing. It's a lifestyle. So we really need to address how we live, the products we're using, and what we put into our bodies, what we put into our minds. A healthy mindset also plays a large role in this, and then supporting these things with nutrients. So there's different ways to address immune dysregulation, leaky gut, inflammation, and thyroid hormones, but we have to address them all. And the process of doing that should be individualized, meaning each person is different, and the main contributing factors in the order of how to address these things is typically different for most people, and it can be complicated and messy. So I advise you to work with someone who has worked with these patients and has made it through and help them, because it can be quite complicated, and that is why we study these things and read the research. So don't ever think that any kind of disease you have is contributed to one specific thing, is what I want you to get out of that. So then we have high cholesterol levels. One of the biggest reasons for an elevated LDL cholesterol, which people perceive as the bad cholesterol, it has to do with low thyroid hormone production. So unfortunately, most medical doctors run a simple lipid panel. They see high cholesterol and treat it with a statin medication, and it never gets to the root cause of why we have elevated LDL levels. And sometimes the thyroid can be contributing to that. So statin medications deplete CoQ10 in the mitochondria, and this actually causes a worsening of thyroid function because it's already, low thyroid function is already decreasing your metabolism and your energy production, which happens in the mitochondria. So these statin medications, they deplete CoQ10 in the mitochondria, and that worsens your energy production, so you may feel more fatigued. Thyroid hormone is a key player in the formation of cholesterol, as well as the expression of LDL receptor. Low thyroid function leads to poor expression of the LDL receptor and increased cholesterol production by the body. Basically, the body doesn't realize how much LDL it is producing, but the receptor is not reading it. Thyroid hormone is important in bile production, of which cholesterol is a major component. So bile is how the body gets rid of excess LDL. But in individuals with hypothyroidism, typically we'll see sluggish bile motility. I see a sluggish bile motility all of the time. The cholesterol component of bile is typically taken up and eliminated through the stool. So constipation is another common side of low thyroid. And poor bile motility plays a large role in this. A study in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism demonstrated that elevations in TSH without a reduction of T4 can cause an increase in LDL cholesterol. So, just something to keep in mind. If you have elevated cholesterol, get that thyroid checked out. Dive in deeper. What's going on? And then I just have this picture up here as part of the article, Thyroid Liver Protect. This is something that contains selenium, which we noted is good for thyroid hormone production and conversion. And then it also contains milk thistle. Milk thistle is going to help you detox better. And what I mean by that is the things that our liver is responsible for metabolizing and getting rid of and putting together, etc. Milk thistle is going to help facilitate that process. So poor concentration and memory. This is another sign of thyroid dysfunction. So thyroid hormone plays an important role in brain function. The brain is actually saturated with thyroid hormone receptor sites, and this plays a huge role in the formation of key neurotransmitters, so dopamine, acetylcholine, serotonin, things like that. Low dopamine levels can lead to poor concentration, while low serotonin can lead to depression and insomnia. So we want good thyroid hormones so that we're contributing to our neurotransmitter balances as well. One of the classic symptoms is depression with hypothyroidism. Many physicians will diagnose and treat depression without even considering the thyroid. Others will experience insomnia and be treated with medications for that without any focus on testing the thyroid. So if you are struggling with depression, I encourage you to get your thyroid checked out. Look into other avenues, what could be going on. There's a strong link in the literature between hypothyroidism and dementia as well. Hypothyroidism causes lowered levels of acetylcholine production, and that's a whole nother topic. I believe Dr. Jockers did a video on that recently. But acetylcholine production, so if you have lowered levels, this leads to forgetfulness and oftentimes constipation, and that has to do with the rest and digest system, the parasympathetic system. So we're not going to talk too much about that today. Correcting the cause of the thyroid imbalance can and should be addressed in these cases is what I want you to understand. So this just goes back through what exactly these areas are that I've been talking about. So you can see the thalamus. The hypothalamus is right under that. So the thalamus takes in all the sensory input from the body. So anything we touch or hear, see, things we think, mechanisms from the body, our neural impulses, things like that. And our hypothalamus also takes these things in from the thalamus, and the hypothalamus, you can see right there above the pituitary, is responsible for secreting the stimulating hormones to the pituitary. We have the anterior and the posterior lobe, and this is the master hormone gland of the body, is what we like to call it. So then this pituitary gland will then secrete its stimulating hormone over to the thyroid, which is that nice, pretty pink gland you see on the trachea there. So then that releases the T4, and then T4 should be converted to T3, but sometimes it's converted into that reverse T3 due to things like stress, low-calorie diets or fasting, illness, and cortisol. So, just about done, guys, so hang in there with me. So thyroid problems can be the cornerstone of a number of major health symptoms. If you're experiencing any of these conditions, then it would be wise to just have your thyroid analyzed, see what's going on. So a lot of doctors will only look at TSH and T4, and this really isn't enough to help us understand the underlying problem of the thyroid. This just tells us, remember where TSH comes from? It comes from the pituitary. And then the T4 and T3, those come from the thyroid. So if we're only looking at that, we're only saying, is our pituitary stimulating our thyroid? Is it doing its job? And then is the thyroid responding by producing thyroid hormones? This doesn't tell us the amount of free thyroid hormones that we have and the amount of bound hormones that we have. It doesn't tell us about antibodies that could be interfering. It does not tell us about nutrients that could be interfering with the process. And it doesn't tell us how T4 is converting to T3. It doesn't show us anything about liver function. The list truly goes on and on. So I recommend looking at free T4 and free T3. The reason being, elevations in estrogen or testosterone can affect the free levels of these hormones, which can cause poor T3 utilization in the cells. So since 80% of hypothyroidism is due to an autoimmune condition, we should always look at antibodies. In particular, we study thyroid peroxidase, or TPO, and thyroid globulin, or TG, antibodies to look for autoimmune activity against the thyroid. Now, like I said, it's normal to have these. The problem is when we have too many antibodies. So we're tearing down that thyroid gland faster than we can build it back up. Finally, we should also look at reverse T3, which is what I've been talking about in response to stress. Our T4 gets converted into that reverse T3. So this is an inactive form of T3 that blocks thyroid activity. Reverse T3 rises with adrenal fatigue as a way of slowing down metabolism so the body can heal. So the test that we use is called the Total Thyroid Report, and this looks at all of the above factors as well as other key points like vitamin D and C-reactive protein, homocysteine, iron, and complete blood count, metabolic panel. Look at B12 and insulin. It's just a very comprehensive test of the overall functioning of the body. It's a great starter test to help you dive into different areas of the body and see what needs to be supported. So if you're interested in that test, you can find it at drjockers.com and go to the lab testing link up at the top. So that concludes this presentation. I hope you guys learned something. Like I said, my name is Haley Gibson. I'm a registered nurse as well as functional diagnostic nutritionist. I work alongside Dr. David Jockers. I kind of explained what we did, but know that we work locally as well as long distance. So we work with people all over the world through telephone or Skype. And then we also work with people locally at Exodus Health Center. So if you are local to the area, we encourage you to come hang out with us, see what we're about. We have free education every Saturday at 12 in the clinic. We like to keep our patients informed. We believe that that is part of what healthcare providers should be doing, is educating their clients and the public so that they can best take care of themselves. So we also do lab evaluations and reports, and like I said, we do the customized planning. We make diet plans specific for your needs. Everyone is different, so figuring that out can be tough, but it's a lot easier when you're working with someone. So if you have any questions, you can email me at nutrition@drjockers.com. Thanks for watching.